Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be playing around with layer styles. In particular, we are going to be applying a pattern overlay layer style. In other tutorials we'll be going into other layer styles and other cool effects that we can do. But for this one we'll just be applying the pattern overlay, which is a really neat trick, and it's really fun to do, especially if you've got custom patterns that you've made. So to apply a pattern overlay layer style, we're going to there are a couple of ways you can do it. You can double click on the layer that you want to apply the style to, or you can select your layer and go to the layer menu and drag down to layer style. You'll see this popover menu pops over, and then you can click on these options. And these are all layer styles. So for our tutorial today, you're going to be clicking on Pattern Overlay, which will bring up this menu. And you can see this pattern already popped up. Now, I'm going to hit Cancel so we can show you the other way to do it. So, the other way to do it is to double click on the layer that you want to apply your layer style to. A lot of you, when you open your new document, what you'll see is that your background layer is locked like this. You can see in my layers palette this little lock icon there. That means that I can't really interact much with this layer. In order to do anything to it, I'm going to have to unlock it, and clicking on that unlocks it on that same icon. It does not relock it. To relock it, you'll have to come up here to this icon that's right up here in the toolbar of the layers palette and click lock. You can also unlock it again the same way. So now that it's unlocked, you can double click on it, and that brings up the same menu that we saw by going to the layer menu up here. So if you double click on it, you're going to have to find your layer style that you want. In this case, we're going to click on Pattern Overlay, which is right here, and you'll see that same pattern pops up on our document. We're not going to worry about blend mode for right now. If you look at the pattern box right here, you click on the little arrow, or you can click on the actual pattern itself, and it'll bring up this dialog box. I have a lot of patterns here, but these are ones that I've made. You are probably only going to have about 3 to 5, maybe 10. These 3 here are pretty standard with Photoshop installations. So you can click on one of them. We're just going to keep this carpeting looking one. And that's your pattern. So you click on it, and then click away from it to close that box. And you can change the scale, which means you can change how big your pattern is with this scale key. And if you click and drag on the slider, you'll see that it changes size. You can also manually enter a number with the keyboard. And then your opacity, that slider is up here. You can change how see-through, as it were, your pattern is. Again, you can change it with the slider, or you can enter a number again. So I'm going to change both of these back to 100 so that we can see them a little bit more clearly, and hit OK. And there you have it. A layer style has been applied to our background layer. You can also do this with non-rasterized layers. In this example, our text is not a rasterized layer. So I'm going to undo this pattern overlay that I've applied to my background layer. And if you remember from a previous tutorial, the way we do that is hit Control-Z, or go to Edit, Undo, or you can open your History palette and click back a step or two, like that. If we wanted to apply a layer style to the text layer, you do it the same way, by double-clicking on it. And that brings up the same window that it did with our background layer. Again, click on Pattern Overlay, choose our pattern, and hit OK. Just going to leave everything the way it was. and that carpeting pattern is applied to my text layer. I'm going to undo that, and again go up to layer, drag down to layer style, excuse me, and drag down to pattern overlay. And it does. Oops, I have my layer, the wrong layer selected. So what happened there was, because of the way I have my move tool set up, when I clicked on the background layer, it automatically selected that layer down here. If you keep your eyes on this layer palette and watch what happens when I click on the background layer, it automatically selects it. So now my text layer is reselected. So that was a mistake, and I'm kind of glad that happened, so you guys can see sort of what happens with different tool settings. Anyway, so to apply that layer again, we're going to go to Layer, drag over to Layer Style, and down to Pattern Overlay. And you will see that layer applied in the same way that it was when we double-clicked on the text layer. So you can play around with layer styles using that same mechanism that we use to apply pattern overlays. So I'm going to deselect that and drag this over so that you can see what we're doing. The other layer styles that you can use are really fun. Bevel and Emboss will let you create this sort of embossed effect. And depending on what settings you set, you can change the sharpness of the bevel, which is really a neat little effect. You can change the size, so you can play around a little bit with that. I'm going to deselect that. You can apply strokes and use the slider to change the size. I have a lot of fun with that. I probably use stroke more than would be recommended by professional graphic designers, but I can get away with that since I'm still a student at this point. Deselect that. Inner shadow. You can apply an inner shadow, make it look like it's the text is cut into whatever it's sitting on top of. Inner glow. Satin. Color overlay, if I wanted to be red, and so on and so forth. All of these are really fun to play with, and I always have a lot of fun with the layer styles. And so that's how you set them, by double-clicking or going to the layer menu. So I have included this PSD file as a project file, and there's a link to it in the About section of this video. So you can download this. You'll see when you open it up in Photoshop these same two layers, and try to experiment a bit with the tips that I used here to apply your own layer styles, and play around a little bit with it until you get comfortable, and have fun.